The hardest thing by far about being a first-time buyer in Toronto is saving up for your down payment. You know what? It's a pretty daunting task. If we think about the minimum down payment on a $500,000 condo, it's still 5%, and then at that point, you're at $25,000. But we can also get as big as $200,000. If you look at $1 million property, you need to have 20% down. So when it comes to saving for a down payment, it's best to get started young, get started early, and get ready to invest. So I totally get it. Down payments are looming large, very overwhelming stuff. That's why we're going to go over a piece of legislation that was proposed by the federal government and may come into action sooner than we think. We're going to go over the First Home Savings Account, an account meant to help you as a first-time buyer save for your first home. Very quickly before we begin, my name is Gabriele Battista from Homes into Reality. I'm a local real estate agent in the Toronto area. I bring content every single week helping first-time buyers in the Toronto market. I love helping first-time buyers, and I want to do my best to help you feel confident in the market. So when you're ready to move 2 years, 3 years, 1 month, whatever it may be, I'm there to support you guys through that journey of being a first-time buyer in Toronto. I'm going to go over an article that I found in CanadaLife.com. It came out in December of 2022, but it goes over the whole First Home Savings Account very well, asks a lot of good questions, and we'll go over those questions. I'll try to sum it up really well for you in a short video. Also, if you want to read the whole article, you can do so. I'll leave the link in the article in the description. It's about a 15-minute read, but a good read. It asks a lot of really good questions. For the first thing we're going to go over is what exactly is a First Home Savings Account, an FHSA. A bit of a tongue twister there, but what exactly is a First Home Savings Account? What does it do for you? The idea with this is it was proposed by the federal government last year, and it was something that it seemed to be taking effect in sometime in 2023. I've heard April 1st. I've heard early April. I haven't been able to confirm it when it's going to be starting, but it's something that should be starting soon, sooner than we may think. And then the intention of the First Home Savings Account is to help first-time buyers get into the Canadian real estate market. In the sense of this, it's more of a saving vehicle. It's something that is going to, similar to a TFSA, is going to encourage people to invest early, invest often, and get into the market and have maybe more of a purpose behind saving their money in a certain goal there. And then all the money you put towards the First Home Savings Account eventually must go towards your first purchase of your home. And the First Home Saving Account has some tax advantages, and it has a combination of tax advantages similar to a RRSP and a TFSA. And we'll get a little bit later on in the video on how that is. So the first thing we're going to go over is who's eligible for this program. It's not a program that all Canadians can use, as it's being called the First Home Savings Account. So there's got to be your first home, and it's got to be for a Canadian. So we'll get into how you qualify for this type of home. You must be a Canadian resident, at least 18 years old. Makes sense for a Canadian first savings account. You got to be Canadian. And then 18 years old helps you really start saving up at that young age. You cannot own a home in the calendar year that the account is opened, nor the 4 years preceding that. So essentially, this is targeted there because you want people who are first-time buyers. You don't want people who to game the system and not use it if they're just purchasing a second home, a third home. Then it would be kind of pointless because you're not incentivizing the first-time home buyer to get into the market. It mentions too, you can have more than one First Home Savings Account, but you cannot exceed your yearly or total contribution limit. I don't know why someone would open up a second account. Let me know in the comments why you would open a second First Home Savings Account, because in the end, you can only purchase for your first home. But that's an interesting thought. But yeah, you can open up more than one if you want to, but ideally you probably open up one for your first home. The good news is that I think it's targeted pretty well, pretty correctly. Obviously, only Canadian residents can use it, and it's targeted towards first-time buyers. But that's the good news, because in the end, we don't want it to be in a system where someone can game it, buy their second home and third home with this account. It would really disincentivize, or at least would make the advantage fairly useless, because everyone would be able to get in, and there's not that advantage to first-time buyers that get into the market. Next thing we're going to get into is what's your contribution limit? What's the limitations when it comes to the account on how much money you can put in? Because in the end, I mentioned before, a down payment on a $500,000 condo is $25,000. But for $1 million home, you're up to $200,000. So what's the extent on what you could contribute to something like this? Here are the main contribution rules that I'm finding through this article. Is a contribution limit that you have is $8,000 per year, and with a maximum contribution lifetime of $40,000. So in a single year, you wouldn't be able to contribute more than $8,000. And if you put any more towards that amount, I believe there's a taxable amount where it wouldn't make any sense. So the $8,000 per year, and then per X amount of years, between 5 years, you'd be able to get to $40,000. This makes me feel like in the end that it's something that's really great for very young people. Maybe they're 18 years old right now, because they can start saving early. And by the time at that point they're 23, you have to do the math in my head, they've been able to save $40,000 for that down payment if they're saving pretty aggressively for that first home. It also mentions you're not paying tax or capital gains or interest on these accounts because they are tax-free. And that's where the TFSA part of the conversation comes in. Similar to a TFSA, you can put money into a TFSA, have a contribution limit. Anyone can have a TFSA, and you can buy stocks, you buy investments that may appreciate over the years. And when you finally take that money out of your TFSA, they are tax-free, capital gains free. But a similar thing when it comes to like this is you'll be able to put in a first home savings account, you'll be able to put, let's say, $8,000 per year. And ideally, you're buying stocks that are appreciating. So after 5 years of putting so much money in, you don't have $40,000. You have more. And that's why I think it really helps someone who's much younger, 18, 19, 20, where they have, let's say, a very strong goal ahead of them. So that's really good news in the sense of, when you finally take that money out, tax-free. Another key point to note here is any contributions you make to this account will lower your taxable income by the equal amount. So let's say at $8,000 you put towards your first home savings account, you can get $8,000 deducted from your income, which may save you in the end some money income tax wise. Very similar to an RRSP contribution. Quick example I'll use, let's say that someone in Canada makes $88,000 a year. Typically, they'll be taxed whatever the income tax bracket is on the full $88,000. What happens instead is because they put $8,000 towards their first home savings account, they now only have a taxable income of $80,000. And so your tax in the end that you're going to pay to the government is going to be less because that $8,000 is gone. Not only is that $8,000 non-taxable, that money's going to your first home savings account and can grow. So there's a significant amount of contribution. Like there's a benefit because that money's going to grow and you don't have to get rid of any of it. And the fact that that $8,000 also isn't taxable. So there's some savings on both the TFSA end and the RRSP end in terms of the tax advantages. This would really help someone who's maybe a younger professional in their 20s who starts to build their income and get a higher income, and they're getting to a point where they're getting ready to save for the house. If they want to get to a point where they want to lower their taxable income to, number one, get the benefits of increasing that down payment, but number two, paying less money in taxes. That's something where for a young professional or someone who's getting a little bit closer to purchasing that home is going to be very beneficial. So in short, you'll be able to put a maximum of $8,000 per year. You could put less if you'd like, and that contribution room carries over every single year. So let's say you only put $4,000 into the first year, you will then have $12,000 as that extra $4,000 is carried over. So in a total, in 5 years, you can put a total up to $40,000. You don't have to do it within the 5 years. You can do it in a longer period of time, but you'll be able to put a maximum of $40,000. Ideally, you keep it in there early because it has more opportunity to grow tax-free. And although we look at $40,000 and it's not a full down payment for a lot of properties, it does cover a lot of it. Like if we go back to our example, for a $500,000 condo, you're looking at a down payment of $25,000. If you're looking for a condo between $500,000 and $1 million, it may not cover that full down payment, but it certainly does help as a saving vehicle to get you started. Now, exciting news. You're finally ready to start taking the money out and putting it towards that first home. You've saved a lot of money. You spent a lot of time getting this first home savings account stocked up with some good money to get towards that down payment. There's a couple good notes that this mentions when it comes to taxation. There's no tax consequences if the withdrawal of the home is your first home. So that's the key there. The first home savings account must also be closed within 1 year of the first withdrawal. That's why I kind of mentioned it doesn't make sense why you would have two accounts of this, because the moment you use this account and you buy your first home, it's going to go away within a calendar year. So you want to make sure that you have it towards your first goal and your only goal. And withdrawals that are not related to a first-time buyer purchase will be considered taxable income. So this is where I mentioned that it's guided very well, this first-time home buyer saving account. You cannot take this money out and use it towards buying a new car. You cannot take this money out and buy towards an investment property. This must go towards your principal residence. So for whatever reason, if let's say you buy something else and the government takes note of that, instead of it being tax-free when you take the money out of the account, they're actually going to tax you as taxable income. So let's say you make $100,000 in a year and you have $40,000 in this account, you're making $140,000 a year, fully taxable. So you want to make sure when you use this money, you make sure you use it towards your first home. It's the reason why you put it in there. It should be the reason why you take it out. Also mentions over here, the first home savings account withdrawals do not need to be paid back. And the reason why they mention this is in the home buyer's plan, there's a thing where for your RSPs, you can borrow up to $30,000, I believe it is, and you have to pay that back slowly through your RSPs. That's not applicable here. You don't have to pay back this let's say you have $40,000 in the first home savings account. You'd never have to pay back the $40,000. This account is meant for you to eventually spend it on your first home, not to be paid back into your RSP. It's also mentioned you actually cannot use the RSP home buyers plan and the first home savings account for the same home. So the idea is you use one or the other. I think in most cases, the first home savings account is a much better tool to actually use. So that's what my thought there, but you have to use one or the other. So hopefully this is something that comes out soon, because there's no given date when it comes to the first home savings account. But what are my thoughts on this when it comes to first-time buyers? It certainly helps. Like there's no doubt about that. It's encouraging Canadians to start investing young and have it with a goal in mind. Don't just invest for the sake of investing, although investing no matter what is great for young Canadians. You want to invest with a goal. And this is essentially creating that goal for you. It's kind of forcing your hand, hey, this money is going to go towards your house one day. That's really important to know. So I think it's good. When it comes to changing prices of real estate, I don't think it's going to make homes more affordable in the end. I don't think it's going to make homes less expensive. Like in the end, this is going to help first-time buyers exclusively, maybe help them keep up with the growing, let's say, cost of living, help them keep up to pace with inflation and with the rising expenses of everything else. So that's a good idea, but it definitely won't slow down the housing market and have a big effect when it comes to this type of stuff. Because again, it's not an instant gratitude effect. It's something that someone has to grow over 5 years. And then a lot of people are already taking advantage of their TFSA right now. So it's a second added vehicle when it comes to using this type of stuff. It's nice the fact that a first-time buyer can use both a TFSA to gain some, to put some money into investments, and the first home savings account to really be able to double down on the amount they're investing towards this goal. But in no way do I think it's going to have an added effect on the real estate market in general. My question in this video, in the end, I kind of want to open it up to people watching is the first home savings account enough? Is the government doing enough to make housing more affordable and more realistic for young Canadians? That's the question I want to ask. And because in the end, I work with young Canadians, young Torontonians, people in Ontario. This is my target that I want to help educate. And I want to hear from you guys. You can either message me, put in the comments, whatever it may be. Let me know, is the government doing enough for young people to help them keep up with the market and eventually get into the market? Thank you for watching this video. If you have any questions about the real estate market in general, or you're interested in becoming a first-time buyer soon, let me know, set up a call. I'm happy to do so in the link in my description. I have videos coming out every week on Instagram and YouTube. So I'm happy to, my goal is to keep educating first-time buyers in the real estate market. This is where I get very passionate about when it comes to my business. So if there's anything I can do, feel free to reach out. Don't be a stranger. Anyways, see you next week. Happy to talk as always. Take care.